Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to speak.
Kevin Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to stand in support of this bill. I think it's one of those occasions where I'm not sure about the ACT Party, but I think pretty well everyone else in the House is likely to be voting for this bill, and indeed we may well all be giving more or less the same speech in this debate. So if I could commence on that tradition by joining other speakers in expressing our appreciation of the work undertaken by officials from the Ministry of Health in assisting the Health Select Committee in its work on the bill. It's a complex area of legislation, surprisingly, but officials were diligent and provided good quality advice, I felt, to the committee. Also acknowledge the good heart and spirit with which the committee considered the bill. As others have mentioned, the distinctions between parties on the Health Select Committee on this issue would not have been obvious to anyone coming into the room, because actually members of the committee worked as a single unit, and it was a pleasure to be part of. The submitters were also an interesting bunch, and I'll comment about that in a moment. And there's another one person that I do want to single out at this point in my remarks for some praise, and that's Ian Lees-Galloway, not actually for his role on the Health Select Committee, but for having in the first place advanced his members' bill to this House and having it drawn from the ballot to ban the retail display of tobacco and tobacco products. I suspect that may well have been the spur that brought this bill to the House, and I commend Mr. Lees-Galloway for that. The submitters, as I say, were an interesting bunch, and I think it would be fair to say that broadly speaking, with very few exceptions, submitters said that they supported the legislation or supported its general thrust. But from that point, they broke down into two broad categories, and the first of those was a category of submitters who said, yes, of course we support the goal of New Zealand being a smoke-free country. Yes, of course we support the broad thrust of this legislation, but there are some really specific reasons why the time frame that's in this bill won't work for our particular organisation or business, or the particular way that the bill applies its restrictions to retail displays won't quite work for us, and therefore we should be exempted from it. I particularly recall an example of I think it was a submitter on behalf of the duty-free retailers at Auckland Airport, who said that while they were broadly supportive of this legislation, it couldn't apply to duty-free retailers because of the inconvenience that would cause to travellers, and the efficiency of airport operations required that passengers were able to make their duty-free purchases as quickly as possible, and covering up the displays of tobacco products and requiring a further step of uncovering those tobacco products in order for passengers to be able to make their purchases would impede the efficient operation of airports. I didn't have a lot of time for that argument, or indeed for the other flimsy excuses that were advanced by submitters in that group. I'm very pleased that the Select Committee resisted any temptation that may have existed to succumb to such arguments. There has been a small compromise made on the commencement of the measures, and I think that was a sensible change to make. But that in itself is counterbalanced by another change that the committee made, which was to greatly increase the fines, and some other speakers have already spoken about that. The other broad category of submitters that I'd refer to would be submitters like Action on Smoking and Health and the Smoke Free Coalition and some of those others that Chris Farfoy, for example, just spoke about in his recent contribution. And those were people who were excited about the fact that Parliament was taking this step and very strongly supportive of the goal of a smoke-free nation and concrete steps being taken towards that goal. And I guess the thing that I would say about those submitters is they in general were saying what this bill is doing is fantastic, but there are other things that the bill could also be doing at this time. And so, for example, they spoke about the need for a register. And one of the practical problems that's being encountered by people who are out there in the field trying to enforce New Zealand's smoke-free environments legislation is that it's very hard to keep track of who actually is selling tobacco and tobacco products. And they argued very strongly for the need for a register of people who would be selling those products. And they were supported in that by the agencies, regional councils and such, public health providers, the agencies that actually were doing that enforcement. So I think the case for a register is extremely strong, and that would indeed have been an extremely sensible addition to this bill. So it's a matter of some regret that we didn't take that step. I guess the other area that those submitters were suggesting that the committee could advance the bill and advance the cause of smoke-free environments legislation was to pick up some more of the recommendations of the Māori Affairs Select Committee. And I've got a very considerable sympathy for that point of view. We were presented with a rare opportunity of an extremely well-founded and thorough investigation by the Māori Affairs Select Committee that we know travelled the length and breadth of the country in an extremely thorough process, hearing from the tobacco industry as well as from all of those of us who really strongly support that goal of a smoke-free nation. And on the basis of that very thorough inquiry that was supported by all parties, in fact, the committee came up with a comprehensive set of regulations, plain packaging for tobacco products, for example. And I believe that there was an opportunity to incorporate more of the recommendations of the Māori Affairs Select Committee into this bill. And the public is reasonably going to ask, for goodness sake, Parliament has got this perfect vehicle, a smoke-free environments amendment bill, going through the Parliament. Why on earth doesn't Parliament take this opportunity to advance that program of actions so that we can move at a faster pace towards the goal that pretty much everyone shares? And that, sir, is a reasonable question. Why on earth haven't we taken that opportunity? I have no doubt at all that the denormalising of tobacco products that will occur as a result of this bill being passed into legislation will be an extremely positive step forward. Other speakers have referred to the herbal smoking products, changes that were made and were not made. I think Paul Hutchison may need to check back on the official's report, because I'm not sure that his characterisation of what the bill does and doesn't do is entirely correct in his second reading speech. But I think sellers and producers of herbal smoking products should be on notice that, in fact, the expectation of the Select Committee would be that we will actually, at some point in the future, consider changes to bring those products in line with tobacco products. So in closing, sir, I want to join others in praising Minister Turia and indeed to those other members of the House who were involved with the Māori Affairs Select Committee. Tau Hanare as the chair, Hone Harawira, a former member of this House, and the members of that committee. This is a good bill. It could be better, but certainly we'll be supporting it. Thank you, sir.
Te ora o